Metal Gear Solid is one of the most legendary franchises in gaming, but it is also one of the most confusing ones. Between Big Boss, Liquid Snake, and Solid Snake, you don't know which is which and who is who. Well, in today's video, I'll explain the timeline of all the snakes, what Snake Eater really means for the whole story, and what you can expect from the new upcoming game, MGS Delta Snake Eater. To understand Metal Gear Solid Delta, we need to first untangle the family tree of the whole snakes. So let's get down to it. Let's start with the original, Naked Snake, later known as Big Boss. He's the main character of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, set in 1964, where we follow his journey as a young CIA operative during the Cold War. In this game, he defeats his mentor, the boss, and earns the title of Big Boss. But here's the twist. While he starts as a hero, over time Big Boss loses faith in governments and ideologies. He becomes disillusioned and starts building his own armies free from any political control. That transformation makes him both a legendary soldier and eventually one of the main antagonists of the series. He appears in Peace Walker, Ground Zeroes, and The Phantom Pain, shaping the whole Metal Gear world. His story ends in Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, where he reappears in 2014 in the graveyard scene, finally reconciling with the Solid Snake before dying of old age and disease. So Big Boss is both the beginning and the end of Metal Gear's story, a hero turned myth, turned enemy, turned a tragic father figure. Now let's talk about Solid Snake, the most famous snake. His Big Boss's genetic clone created through the Terrible Children project. The project's original name is in French, but in order to not to butcher the name, we're just gonna stick to the English one. Solid, you can say, is the quiet, reluctant soldier who always gets the impossible missions. He defeats Venom Snake, Big Boss, Liquid Snake, and even his brother clones. He's also the one who takes down multiple Metal Gear weapons. In Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, he's still fighting to stop the World Control System. And in the MGS4 Guns of the Patriots, we see him as the old Snake, suffering accelerated aging. That's where he has his final showdown with Liquid Ocelot, and later witnesses the death of the Big Boss. So Solid Snake is basically the saga's main protagonist, the man who fights for free will against every controlling system, even against the man he was cloned from. Now we got to the jealous brother, Liquid Snake. Liquid Snake, Solid Snake's twin brother, is the antagonist of Metal Gear Solid. He's flamboyant, loud, and obsessed with proving he's the superior clone of Big Boss. Liquid leads Foxhound in the Shadow Moses incident, trying to use Metal Gear Rex to start an insurrection. Unlike Solid Snake, who's calm and controlled, Liquid is fiery and egotistical, almost theatrical in how he taunts Snake. Even after his death, his legacy continues. His arm is transplanted onto Ocelot, creating the bizarre Liquid Ocelot persona we see in MGS4. Liquid represents the loud, chaotic side of Big Boss's legacy, the son who just refuses to live in anyone's shadow. Then there's Solidus Snake, the third clone and the main antagonist of MGS2 Sons of Liberty. Unlike Solid and Liquid, Solidus was created to be a perfect balance of Big Boss's genes. He becomes president of the United States, but secretly tries to overthrow the Patriots, the AI network controlling the whole world. Solidus is colder, more ruthless, and more politically minded than his brothers. He doesn't just fight for ego, he fights for power and ideology, wanting to break free from the control, but in a much harsher way. He's defeated by Raiden in 2009, making him one of the shorter-lived snakes. But at the end, he shows us what happens when Big Boss's genes are given to someone raised in pure politics and control, not in the battlefield. Next up is Venom Snake, the man who isn't really the big boss. In the Phantom Pain 1984 to 1985, players control Venom Snake, a former medic who was brainwashed and given Big Boss's identity after a coma. Venom represents the idea of being a phantom. He lives Big Boss's legend, fights Big Boss's wars, but he's not the real man. His existence lets the true Big Boss operate from the shadows. In the timeline, Venom is eventually killed by Solid Snake during the events of the very first Metal Gear game in 1995, where Snake is just sent to destroy the outer heaven. So in a way, Venom's whole life was a sacrifice. He carried Big Boss's name, took his enemies, and died so the myth of Big Boss could continue. Finally, let's talk about Ocelot. Not a clone, but one of the most important characters tied to the Snakes. He appears as early as MGS3 as Revolver Ocelot, a young soldier on their Volgan, and eventually he becomes a triple agent working for everyone and no one. Ocelot's role is manipulation. He always has his own agenda. In MGS1 he's with Liquid, and in MGS2 he becomes a host to Liquid's persona via that infamous arm transplant, and in MGS4 he transforms into Liquid Ocelot, leading the global PMCs. But in the end, it's revealed that he hypnotized himself to act like Liquid as part of his plan to free the world from the Patriots. He's one of the few characters who survives almost the entire saga, dying in 2014 during his final duel with the old Snake. So Ocelot is the thread tying all the Snakes together, friend, foe, and manipulator rolled into one. So here's the whole Snake family tree. The original soldier, the Big Boss, Solid, Liquid, and Solidus, his 3 clone sons, and Venom Snake, his phantom double. All of these snakes play a vital role in all the different games, sometimes as a hero, sometimes as a villain. But one thing they have in common is all of that comes back to one guy, Big Boss. So let's talk about Metal Gear Solid 3: The Snake Eater. This is where the story begins. You play as Naked Snake, which is during the Cold War in the 1960s, and you carry on a mission into the deep Soviet-controlled areas. His goal is to rescue a weapons designer, destroy a nuclear tank, and confront his mentor, the Boss, in one of gaming's most iconic final battles. It's a story about loyalty, betrayal, and the painful choices that transform Naked Snake into the Big Boss. Gameplay-wise, Snake Eater introduced survival mechanics like eating food, healing injuries, and camouflaging yourself in the environment. It wasn't just about stealth, it was about surviving behind enemy lines, and that's what really made Snake Eater such a great masterpiece. Now let's take a look at Metal Gear Solid Delta. Delta is a full remake of MGS3, rebuilt with modern graphics, all done in Unreal Engine 5. The developers have promised that the original story and the voice acting remain unchanged, so the heart of Snake Eater is intact. But what's new is the presentation. We're talking photorealistic jungles, improved survival mechanics, and next-gen stealth gameplay. Think of Delta as the ultimate way to experience Big Boss's origin story, especially for the newcomers who never played the PS2 original. So if you're wondering where to start with the Metal Gear saga, Delta is the perfect entry point. It's the foundation of the entire story. So there you have it. All the snakes untangled, the story of Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, and what to expect from MGS Delta. Whether you're a longtime fan or a new player, Metal Gear Solid Delta is the greatest chance you can have at experiencing one of the most legendary stories in gaming. If you enjoyed this full breakdown, leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments who's your favorite snake. And remember, with Metal Gear Solid, nothing is ever as it seems.